About 8 months ago, I was given an iPod Shuffle 4th generation, not the vape one, and while I did try to fix it, I couldn't, which left me with a tray of iPod parts. So, today, let's turn it into some art. Now, before I start talking about how I made the framed shuffle, let's talk about how I got here. I was given a dead iPod Shuffle. At first, I didn't actually know it was dead, but when I tried to power it on, it didn't work. So I decided to crack it open. This also wasn't an easy task either, though. There's some prying on the clip, some more prying, some inserting of tools, some more prying, and if you're lucky, then the back of your iPod's case isn't super warped. I wasn't that lucky, but what was more interesting was what I was greeted by once I did get in. A lot of grease. This was kind of confusing. Why would you fill an iPod with grease? Or how would that much grease get in an iPod in the first place? Well, after a bit of research, it turns out that filling an iPod Shuffle through the headphone jack with silicone grease was a way to make them waterproof. Fortunately, I have 3 other iPod Shuffles, but instead of having a tray of pieces sit here, why not make it into something interesting? Well, something interesting sounds great. Which is why I let the iPod parts sit in a tray for 8 months on my windowsill, gathering dust and sticking to the grease that was still present no matter how many times I brushed its teeth with isopropyl alcohol. And there's still quite a bit of grease there, and I actually had problems getting the mounting tapes to stick to the motherboard and other pieces because it was still kind of greasy. So there was some extra toothbrushing during this assembly. Now, some of the inspiration to this idea goes to the Grid Frame Studio, which I've been seeing for quite a while. It's a pretty neat way of turning otherwise dead iPhones or other devices into a pretty neat piece of wall decoration. But their stuff is pretty expensive, and that's fine, but I don't feel like paying for things, and they don't actually have an iPod Shuffle version at all. So off it was to my favorite design program, #NotSponsored. The first thing though was to just take a photo of the components so that I could have a bit of a reference for how to place things. Knowing that the click wheel is 25 millimeters across, it was relatively easy to make sure everything was in the right scale. Then I could basically just make some squares and position things how I wanted them to be. I added some text and some labels, and pretty good. I then laser cut a piece of acrylic to be the back plate that all the things are actually mounted to and above the graphic. From there, I aligned and stuck on all my pieces. I also designed and 3D printed a nice little frame, which I think came out nicely. It has a nice mounting hole if I want to put it on the wall, which I probably won't because it's pretty small and will look kind of orphaned by itself. It'll probably end up somewhere on my set back here, but I guess you'll just have to subscribe and watch my next video. Ha, bait. With those ready, I could print out my background on some photo paper, cut it out, and shove it into the frame. I then also really had to shove the acrylic in because apparently the tolerances on the laser cutter were a bit tight and I did not account for PLA shrinkage as much as I should have. So, oops. It worked though, it just needed a bit of gentle persuasion from the bottom of my hammer handle. No, that's not a threat. And there it is. What I think is a very nice use for an otherwise useless object. And on top of that, it's kind of neat to have other iPod Shuffles that are the same model, albeit a different color, right next to it, because it really shows how things go together nicely. If you saw this and thought, hey, that looks really nice, I'd like to have one for myself to go on my desk or set or wall, Well, good news. The models for the frame, a back plate that can be 3D printed with a piece of paper glued on top of it instead of behind it, and the laser cut version that I used will be in the description. You'll also find a PDF that's the right size that you can print out for the graphics part. And if you'd like to laser engrave the backplate graphic, then a PDF for that is also available. Well, if you made it this far, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. I think it turned out really nicely and is a great use for something that would otherwise be useless. If you'd like to help me keep doing these videos, then just subscribing or sharing the video with someone goes a long way. Thank you for watching, and goodbye. Roll the intro here. That was so cringe. Should have turned off screensaver.